All right, you guys, let's go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to the Healing Power of Plant Foods cooking class. I'm April Ashcroft, and I'm very happy to have you guys here tonight. This fun opportunity to get together and to share some good food ideas and the health benefits of them. I've been eating a whole food plant-based diet for over 30 years, and I changed from the standard American diet to that because of the health that I saw my family, or the non-health, I should say, that I saw my family as they aged, experienced. I've got the whole gamut of disease in my family: heart disease, diabetes, cancer, kidney failure, no autoimmune, thank goodness. But and I learned a long time ago that that wasn't my genetic destiny necessarily. I very firmly believed back in my younger years, as I was watching my family go into, like my dad, he had a heart attack, and watched him go into the hospital and have bypass surgery, and grandparents as well. And I just decided that this is something that I can have control over. And over the years, as I learned about the healing power in plant foods, I switched over to a whole food plant-based diet, and have never looked back because the benefits were really pretty spectacular. So I want to welcome those at home on Zoom. I don't want to forget about you. Welcome. So I've just learned over the years the healing power in these foods and how they decrease risk of disease, and they help you to achieve and maintain your ideal weight, which is on a lot of people's minds this time of year. We're starting those New Year's resolutions. We want to lose those extra pounds that we gained over the holidays, or just want to lose those extra pounds that you've been carrying around with you for many, many years. And this is one of the best ways, and as far as I'm concerned, easiest ways, because you get to eat a lot. This is about abundance. It's about more. I tell people, eat more whole natural plant foods: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts and seeds, and just, minimally processed, minimal animal products. Just the more whole food plant-based that you can get to, the better off you're going to be, the better you're going to feel. Your weight, like I say, you'll be able to maintain your weight better and just feel great. So I'm so happy you're here tonight. We are doing an African Yam Stew. I want to warm up your bellies tonight. It gets a little chilly this time of year, so I love soups. I love doing soups. And then we're going to do some potatoes, Dijon potatoes, roasted potatoes, which reminds me I need to turn on my oven. And then we're going to do a lemon pie. We are in lemon season, and let's see, I need to turn that up to what degrees? 425. Whoops. All right. Yes, we are in the time of year when citrus is coming into season, and I'm kind of a seasonal eater. I like to eat things in season. I find they're cheaper that way, and your body wants those foods at certain times of the year. I learned a while back about tomatoes, for example, and how the compounds in tomatoes help protect your skin from DNA damage from the sun. And what time of the year are tomatoes growing off the vines? They're like July and August, when the sun is the most powerful. So I believe that certain foods grow at certain times of the year because your body needs them at that time of the year. So I wanted to do this lemon pie. I didn't do a holiday class where I did a really yummy pie or a dessert, so I wanted to do a dessert for you guys tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the potatoes, and I meant to have those cut up ahead of time. These are just the, let's see, I guess I need some gloves. These are just some red potatoes, and you can use Yukon Golds or Russets if you like. And a lot of people are afraid of potatoes. They're carbs. Oh, the scary carbs. Carbs are not scary. Carbs are your body's main source of fuel. It's where you get your energy. If you're on a low carb diet, you're on a low energy diet. And maybe you've tried that and you're saying, well, I felt really good, but maybe after a few weeks you weren't feeling so good. I mean, I don't know. That seems to be kind of the normal thing. I've heard people that go on like the paleo or keto, and they say after a few weeks on it, they start feeling not so great. And that's because you're low on those carbohydrates. Your brain's main source of fuel is sugar, and sugar turns into, or carbohydrates turn into sugars. That's what carbohydrates are. So I'm just halving these red potatoes. I like to get the smaller ones. When I go to the store and I'm looking through the red potatoes, I pick out the small ones because they seem to be the best flavor-wise. As food gets bigger, as it grows, the flavor it's not as good. I hate going and, you know, these beautiful fruits in the summer times you go and you got these big old apples and peaches and nectarines. It's like they have no flavor in them. I like to get the smaller varieties so there's more flavor. High carb diets are best for the brain. Again, your brain runs on sugar, one of its main sources of fuel, as well as your muscles. And I'm increasing this by, I'm doing 3 pounds of potatoes tonight, so we had plenty. We had 15 signed up. We don't have quite that many here, but that just benefits you guys because the less people there are, the more food there is for you, right? Now, potatoes are one of those foods. I've never been a huge potato fan and haven't been over the years because of the lack of antioxidants that are in them. I am very much into a very high nutrient diet, and potatoes are kind of more on the other end of the scale. They're a little bit lower nutrient. They're a great source of carbohydrates, like I said, good source of energy, but as far as your antioxidants and phytochemicals, they're a little bit lower. I've got a handout over there of the antioxidant scoring system. It's put out by Dr. Joel Fuhrman. He's one of my favorite nutrition experts, and he developed this Andy score, and it's like I say, it's the amount of antioxidants that are in foods, the nutrient density. Potatoes are down there on the scale. So when I'm doing potatoes, because they are a good food, good source of carbohydrates, I like to have lots of, you know, some greens with them or something that's a little bit more high antioxidants. And those antioxidants are anti-aging compounds. When you hear the word antioxidants, or the words, I want you to think from now on, think anti-aging, because that's what they do. They protect your cells and keep you from aging. And we're all looking for the fountain of youth, right? It's right here, right in the kitchen, right in the produce section of your grocery store. We don't have to buy fancy bottles of juices and supplements to get that. And I'm just kind of cutting out some of the bad spots while we're doing that. All right. This is a super easy meal. I can whip up these. You know, these take about, let's see, how long do these take to cook? They take about 40 minutes to cook. You could do these with a side of greens and you're good. I mean, that's a good meal right there. I have found out, because I did a elimination diet for a while to heal up some gut issues that I was having. So I was on a really super plain diet of like grains and vegetables for many, many months. In fact, I think almost a year. And my nutrient levels were great. My protein levels were good. I don't want those. And so what I found out was, you know, you don't need to get a lot of variety necessarily. You can eat just real basic whole foods, and you'll be just fine. Okay, so to this, the dressing I'm going to put on these potatoes is a Dijon Mustard. And I've just got, again, I'm 1.5 the recipe on this one, and I'm using this golden spicy brown mustard. You can use any kind of mustard. You can do just a regular mustard if you don't care for the Dijon. But to this, I'm going to add 3 tablespoons, or your recipe says 2 tablespoons, of water. And the original recipe called for oil, olive oil. And I don't use any oil ever. It's a very high-fat food. It's the highest calorie, lowest nutrient food that we consume, and it actually increases risk of heart disease, does not decrease risk. If you're eating an unhealthy standard American diet with lots of animal fat and vegetable oils, and you switch to using olive oil, you will probably have some better results with that. But I know a lot of people that are eating a so-called heart-healthy diet, using the heart-healthy oils, and they're still having a problem. And so, of course, they have to go on the medication. And I tell them, you got to get rid of the oils because that oil will increase your cholesterol. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn of the Cleveland Clinic, he has a 98% success rate with his patients, reverses heart disease in them. And they are coming from, they're waiting to have bypass surgery. Their arteries are like 98% plugged, and he reverses their heart disease with a plant-based diet. And he says absolutely no oil at all. So I haven't used oil for about, I don't know, 15 years. And it was a little bit of I'd been eating plant-based and been eating some oily things, some Veganays and Earth Balance buttery spread and some olive oil and, in my cooking. And it was a little bit of adjustment to get rid of that. But once I did, my husband's cholesterol went from 260 down to like 180, I think, in like 6 weeks. So that was some pretty powerful research study for us as we just did it ourselves and experimented, and sure enough, it worked. Okay, so I'm going to put 1.5 teaspoons of Italian seasoning in this, and you can do whatever kind of seasoning you want, whatever kind of herbs you want. Just going to mix that in, and I think we've got some garlic in there as well, don't we? We've got 1 clove of garlic, and I'm going to go with 1.5 cloves. Yes.
If one were to eat or consume oil in moderation, what do you think
When you're dealing with heart disease, like if you're young enough where you don't even know what that is, hardly probably, you'd probably be okay. The only problem is, it creeps up on you as you get older. And I think if you're eating a soup, this Dr. Esselstyn, he says absolutely no oil at all. But again, he's dealing with heart disease patients. I think if you're eating a really healthy, whole food, plant-based diet with lots of greens, lots of fruits and vegetables, you'd probably be okay to use a little bit. But as you get older, and if things start to change with that would be the first thing that I would say to do, is get rid of the oils. But for now, you're young enough, you're probably very active. And I think that's with anybody. If you're older and you're eating a super healthy, clean, lots of greens diet, because the greens actually decrease that harmful effect that the oil has on your arteries. And so if you're eating lots of greens, beans, onions are reduce risk of heart disease. Garlic does as well. That would greatly benefit you. But again, if you're doing everything right, so to speak, except you're still using the oils and you just can't get those cholesterols down and you're concerned about that, try getting rid of the oils and see what happens.
I'm trying to reduce oils, but when I make dressings and I put some oil in, when I use olive oil, it gets real thick in the refrigerator. But if I use grapeseed oil or different kinds, it seems like it stays liquid. Can you, even though you don't like it,
there's
a suggestion on a certain good?
Oh, have I not done salad dressings in my classes?
Yeah, but you don't use oil.
Right. So do you want to use oil?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to use oil.
I want to use a good oil once in a while. I'm trying to reduce the oil.
It's all pretty much the same. The reason that probably gets cloudy and hard in the refrigerator is because it's higher in saturated fat. So with that in mind, the grapeseed oil is probably a little bit better. If it doesn't, you say it doesn't get hard in the fridge?
No.
It's probably a little bit better. So yeah, garlic. I was going to say garlic is part of the allium family. It's in the category with the onions and leeks and scallions and all that. And they have powerful anti-cancer compounds, anti-inflammatory compounds. We want to get garlic into our diet. Good for your blood vessels, good for cholesterol levels. Want to get that garlic in. So we've got that going on here, and I'm just going to dump that right over these potatoes. What oils do is they coat the lining of your arteries. The lining of your arteries have endothelial cells, and those cells produce a gas called nitric oxide, and that gas is produced by leafy green vegetables. It's pretty much dependent on leafy green vegetables. It's so important that we get those leafy greens in. But what happens when we put olive oil into our blood vessels via the mouth, it coats the lining of your arteries and it kind of blocks that nitric oxide production. It blocks those cells and keeps them from producing that. And nitric oxide keeps your blood vessels like Teflon, so that the blood flows through very, very easily. And without that nitric oxide, that's when cholesterol starts to build up and your blood isn't flowing through quite as easily. So just want to watch that. Mm-hmm. Oh, how do I saute? In water or vegetable broth or balsamic vinegar or another kind of vinegar, or tamari is really good. That was one thing that I had to kind of adjust, because that kind of was like, oh, what am I going to saute in? And that's usually a question I get a lot. But it's, in fact, I'm going to start off like with the soup without using anything, just a dry skillet, just to caramelize the onions. And you can do that actually without oil. So, all right, so we just stir that all in there, that mustard on those potatoes, and set that off to the side. And we're going to get our cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. This is I love parchment paper. It's so clean and easy to clean up. We're just going to dump those out onto the cookie sheet. I maybe should have had 2 cookie sheets. You want to try to get these so they're single layer, so they roast a little bit easier. I think we'll be able to accomplish that here. If you want to learn more about the oil issue, you can go to YouTube and look up Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. I think his name might be, I might have him listed down there underneath at the bottom of your page. He's got a lecture about becoming heart attack proof. It's very good. He's easy to listen to. Gets a little technical sometimes, but you get the gist of it. On my website, I've got links to about 4 doctors talking about the olive oil issue, and they're just little 3 to 5 minute clips if you want to just look at those. And my website, I think, is on your handout. It's healthforlifecooking.com. I've got recipes on there, YouTube videos on there, and lots of great information. But the internet is just loaded with lots of information, although sometimes it can get a little overwhelming and confusing if you don't know where to go. Okay, got those spread out evenly, and our oven is, I think, ready. So those ought to be ready right about 7 o'clock. Hopefully by then we'll be done. All right, let's get going with our soup. We'll get that started. This is a super easy, really delicious soup. And one of the best ways to eat your vegetables is in soup, because when you're cooking everything in your pot, nothing's going anywhere. The nutrients aren't going anywhere. It's staying right in the water. There were some studies done that Dr. Michael Greger reports on, and he is at nutritionfacts.org. That's another great place for nutrition facts. He's been putting up a video every day for the last, 5, 6, 7 years, and he's really amazing. There's thousands of videos on his site, and they're little 3 to 5 minute clips. And what he does is he goes through all the nutrition journals out there and finds all these great studies and dissects them and puts them up in video format, where you can learn about different nutrition, different disease processes, different everything. And anything you want to know about disease, weight loss, diet, foods, everything, you can find on them and find out about the research behind it. He gives you the links to go search it yourself. So anyway, but he talks about a study that they did where they looked at 5 different ways of cooking: steaming, sautéing, boiling, stir frying, microwave, I think pressure cooking maybe, and the nutrient loss in all of those. And what they found was the nutrient loss was very similar across the board, except for when they boiled. And when they boiled it, all the nutrients was gone, but it was in the water. So if you're having soup, you're not losing anything. Some vegetables actually increased in nutritional value. We've got carrots, celery, let's see, what else? There were quite a few. Carrots and celery, they were the harder, like the root vegetables, beets, artichokes. They were foods that you actually don't lose anything when you cook them. In fact, when you cook them, you're gaining because your body absorbs more nutrients when the fibers of the plant are softened and you're able to absorb those a little bit better. So I'm just chopping up one medium-sized onion. And I'm going to use my chopper here just for demonstration purposes for those that have not seen this awesome little tool. It's the Vidalia Chop Wizard. You can get these at Bed Bath & Beyond, although they were all out at Christmas time. It was probably a hot Christmas gift this year. Probably every year. Onions have organosulfur compounds, and they are powerful against cancer. They will literally kill cancer cells and remove them from your body. And this thing has got a crack in the bottom. I'm afraid it's going to break any minute. Isn't that handy? Don't you love that? It's the best little kitchen tool. It's the Vidalia Chop Wizard, like the Vidalia onion. And this is one of those. Oh, Costco does? Yeah, there's another one called the Progressive Chop Wizard, and it's got a slicing blade. I had that one, but I never used the slicing blade, and then it broke, so I just got rid of it. But it's a little bit more expensive. So I don't have anything in my pan here. It's just a dry pan, and I'm going to keep it that way for just a little bit. Now this is a pretty decent pan, so it does help to have some, fairly good cookware. But honestly, you really don't. I don't know if the camera's on that or not, but you can see that it's, if you just keep kind of stirring it. And it's not that I have to just sit here and babysit it forever. I can walk away and do something else, which I will. I'm going to go ahead and, let's see. Oh, we're going to chop these mushrooms, actually, because we're going to add some mushrooms to it as well. First, I'm going to chop some garlic. A large European study with onions found that people who eat the most onions have the least cancers of all types. Onion and garlic both have those organosulfur compounds that are very powerful that kill cancer cells. They're anti-inflammatory, antiviral, antifungal. If you want to protect yourself from the coronavirus, eat lots of onions and garlic and vegetables and greens and beans and lots of plant foods. I got it, and it was actually the worst of it was like 3 days, and it was just a head cold. It was very mild for me. I was lucky that way, but I feel like that's the key. Make your body healthy, so you're totally unhospitable to any kind of virus, cancer, anything. Make that not want to be in your body. See, it's still not even sticking. I don't have anything in my pan. And what I'm doing is I'm waiting for those onions to brown and become caramelized. Pardon me? It is at, let's see, like medium high. Probably more like medium. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw my garlic in there as well. And by the way, the more you chop an onion and garlic, the more you break open those cell walls and you cause those compounds, those organosulfur compounds, to kind of become activated. You know, when you take an onion, you can smell it all day and it's not making you cry or anything, but as soon as you chop that open, you're activating those compounds. So the more you chop, the more those compounds are activated. So you want to get those chopped up really well. Now that garlic sticks a little bit more than the onion does, so I just saute it for about a minute or so. And I don't know if you can see, but it's starting to turn brown on the bottom just a little bit. And I don't want to get that to where it's burning too much, because I want to be able to bring that browning off with the water that I'm going to put in here. And if I wasn't making soup, I would just put just maybe a 1/4 cup of water. Woo, that's hot. And then I would continue to, you know, maybe throw in my kale or whatever, broccoli or whatever else that I'm cooking for, you know, if I'm doing a different type of a dish, and just keep the water content low. Maybe throw in a little tamari or a little, you know, balsamic vinegar or whatever I want to add to it. But honestly, I don't ever find I need to use oil for anything. One thing I don't do anymore, and that's grill, because it's really hard to grill without some oil. Although you could probably do some kind of a mustardy, you know, or some kind of marinade without oil in it, I would imagine, but it'd probably stick a little bit. So, and I'm trying to keep my husband's cholesterol down, because he had a problem years ago. So I don't want to go back to using the oil. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and put in some mushrooms. And I've got just a small container here. I'm going to go ahead and chop these further. Mushrooms have aromatase inhibitors that keep estrogen levels low. High estrogen levels increase risk of mainly your hormonal type cancers, cancers that are hormonally driven, like breast cancer, prostate cancer, ovarian cancer. And some studies out of China showed that women who ate just one button mushroom, and that's all these are, is button mushrooms. Women that ate one a day cut the risk of breast cancer by 64%. And when they had green tea with that, it bumped it up to 89% reduction. And Dr. Joel Furman, he suggests, and this is just, I think, his opinion, I don't know that there's any studies confirming this, but that green vegetables in general would have that effect. Because they are also, especially cruciferous vegetables, they have also some anti-cancer properties as well. I did. Yep. Do I eat a variety of them? I don't. I'm really bad with variety. I do the baby bellas, the little bit darker brown ones, because they're easy to find. Although you can find a lot of different mushrooms. They're quite expensive. Although from what I understand, Dr. Furman talks about, you know, getting a variety, and that, you know, it doesn't take very much. Like that one button mushroom reduce that risk so much. So you could just buy, you know, 1 or 2 shiitake mushrooms or oyster mushrooms or whatever and use them. They're very flavorful. So, you know, I encourage you to expand your mushrooms horizons. I'd like to kind of venture out and do a little bit more with it, but have not done that yet. And you want to steam your mushrooms a little bit. You know, I know a lot of people like to put mushrooms on a salad, and that's probably okay occasionally, but they have a toxin on them, a garatine, and they're not sure, the census is still out about, you know, whether it's real toxic or not, but it does have a little bit of toxicity in it. So it's best, I know Dr. Furman encourages you to steam them a little bit, cook with them, but it doesn't take much to blow that garatine off. Okay. All right, I'm just going to let those go for a second. I'm going to go ahead and chop up my kale. Kale is a superfood, super leafy green. Leafy greens are the healthiest foods on the planet, and we want to get them in every single day. In fact, Dr. Esselstyn, the heart disease proof guy, that's another thing that he tells his patients. 6 servings, or is it 5? 5 or 6 servings of leafy greens, steamed leafy greens every single day with some vinegar on them, because the vinegar increases the nitric oxide production. And leafy greens contain lutein, and people with the highest levels of lutein have the cleanest arteries with no atherosclerosis. I'm going to throw in just a little bit more water in that to make sure we're not getting too sticky or anything. So what I do with this kale is I've washed it and I just stack it up like this. So it's a little bit, I try to make it so it's a little bit easier to cut. And I'm going to use pretty much all of the stalk. I know I've seen people strip the stalk off this, but when I'm eating it in a chunky soup, if I was just having a salad, I would do that. But if I'm having like a chunky soup that's got other vegetables in it, I just chop up those stems, you know, real fine, and they just add to the chunkiness of the soup. And that's the bloodline, I think, to the plant. You know, there's nutrients in there. I don't want to throw it away. And if I am leaving some of that off, I'll just eat them raw. I was having a little bit tonight with my dinner, and I mean, they were so sweet. And it depends on the kale. You know, sometimes it's a little bit bitter, but sometimes I get some really good ones that are pretty sweet. I mean, not sweet like candy, but you know, have a good flavor. So I just stack them like this, and I'm just gonna chop them, and I chop them real fine. I don't want a big string of greens coming out of my soup when I'm eating it. I want to chop it real fine. And the green leafy vegetables, it's the same with them as far as chopping, especially cruciferous. And your cruciferous vegetables is your kale, collards, bok choy, arugula, watercress, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, I think I said broccoli, cauliflower, turnips, radishes. They are a certain type of vegetable that, again, have powerful anti-cancer compounds. And in one part of the cell of the plant is a compound called myrosinase, and another part of the cell is glucosinolates. And when you chop, you're bringing those compounds together. The compounds are released and they intermingle and they create what's called isothiocyanates. And those are the compounds that literally attack your cancer cells and kill them. They go through and they seek out damaged cells that are in your body and they try to fix it. If they can't fix it, they get rid of it. Lutein is also concentrated in the eyes to help with night vision. There are some studies done with, this group, I can't think of the name of these people, but anyway, they smoke a lot, and they've got these huts that they smoke in. I wish I could remember the name of these people, the Hunzus or something like that, and they live on pretty much sweet potatoes and kale, or sweet potatoes and green leafy vegetables, but they smoke a lot, and because of all the greens and like the sweet potatoes that they eat, they have the cleanest arteries. Like they have very little heart disease. And I'm sure it's their diet. So I'm just going to chop these up really fine, these stems, throw them in, and then I'll just kind of tear off these. I won't use the real rough ends there. Green leafy vegetables are high in folate. People who have lower levels of folate have a tendency to have 3 times higher risk of depression. Greens are high in antioxidants in general, so they protect your cells, again, from that DNA damage. Anti-inflammatory, they're the most anti-inflammatory food on the planet. They have the lowest calories of all food. You can eat pounds and pounds of greens and not gain an ounce. Of course, who would want to eat pounds and pounds of greens? Okay, so we're going to let that kale cook. I need to chop up that ginger. I almost forgot about that. We're going to add just a little bit more water to that, just so it doesn't. And I like to cook, so when I do soup, I don't fill my pot with water or broth and put all the vegetables in and put on the lid and walk away for 40 minutes or whatever to let it cook. I want to get everything cooked quickly in a little bit of water, and then I'll add the water or broth to it after everything's cooked. And then I can just season it up. I usually just use water. I don't like to use, to buy broth. It's expensive, and I don't know, I'm kind of a purist. I like to make stuff myself. And I'll even, if I have scraps from the vegetables I'm putting into a soup, a lot of times I'll throw those right in a little pan, cover it with water, and I'll bring that to a boil and let them simmer while the soup's cooking, and then I'll add that broth to the soup. I'm going to go ahead and add some ginger, and we've got, let's see, we've got a tablespoon of fresh ginger, I believe. Yes. And you can use dry ginger for this. but fresh is always best. And I've heard if you get organic ginger, you can do the skins on them, but I haven't tried that because they're a little tough. Of course, ginger's good for the tummy when you've got some nausea going on. It's also good for inflammation, good for the blood flow. So we're just going to chop that up really fine. And you can even grate it if you want. I just have never had very good luck with grating ginger.
Greens, do you eat about 5 to 6 of each day, and how do you incorporate those in your meals?
Oh, I eat a ton of greens. I eat a ton of greens. In fact, I used to do green smoothies in the morning, but I kind of, when I got some food sensitivities, that was my gut issues. I had some food allergies, so I had to pretty much get rid of everything I was eating. I had green smoothies every morning for years, like literally like 20 years. And so I had to stop eating those, and I went to sweet potatoes or oatmeal. But I really wanted to get those greens in because I was kind of obsessed with getting greens in. I got a strong family history of heart disease and stuff. And so I just kind of got to where when I'm fixing my husband's smoothie and putting the greens in, I just grab a handful of spinach and I'll just eat it like that. I'm weird, but I've gotten to where I really like it. I kind of crave it. So yeah, I do that for breakfast, and then for lunch I have a big raw and cooked salad. I actually eat cooked vegetables with my salad. So I'm getting them in that way, and then for dinner, sometimes I'll steam up an entire bunch of kale and throw in some rice and beans and season it up, and that's my dinner. I mean, I try to keep it kind of simple. So, but Dr. Esselstyn recommends, I didn't finish saying what I was going to say about that, and this is about a tablespoon of the ginger. I'm just going to throw that in here. Yeah, he tells him to eat a serving for breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. So 5. And I think there's even a 6th one before bed, a bedtime snack of leafy greens. Imagine that. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? All right. I can already smell that. Okay, so we got that ginger going in there. I'm going to go ahead and put our seasonings in. Well, actually, I'm going to put our chilies in there. We got a can of green chilies, and these are mild. You can go hot if you want. Whatever you like. I'm not very up on the chilies and the different kinds of chilies and different flavors and what they each are like. So I'm not real sure about that. I would probably, if I was going to use fresh, I'd probably use jalapeno just because that's what I'm most familiar with. Serrano, I think, is hotter, isn't it? Hot. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Even between like a jalapeno. Some are mild, some are hot. You got to be careful. That's why I like using canned, is because I see, okay, mild. You know, when you're using a fresh, you just never know. One thing I do like to do with peppers is, you know, if they're a pepper that turns a color, like I think most peppers do, green bell peppers are actually unripe, red, yellow, orange, whatever. So I prefer to wait until the peppers are, you know, that's that time of year when they're the color. I hardly ever use green bell peppers. And I know jalapenos are the same way. They will turn red eventually, and I prefer to use a red jalapeno. Okay, let's see. I'm going to wait until this kale is tender before I add the tomato stuff. So I want to get that kale good and cooked. Okay, so in this soup, you could, with the sweet potato, you could cook it raw. You could eat it raw, or I mean, chop it up raw and put it in the soup, and that's when you would want to do it, when you're putting in your greens, put in your sweet potatoes. I actually prefer to speed up the cooking. I'm always thinking ahead. I'm always thinking about food, always thinking ahead. And I like to just put the sweet potato right in the oven and bake it on a cookie sheet. In fact, I do this often. 2 or 3 times a week I'll do a cookie sheet of sweet potatoes because I love them just as a snack. And I'll have, like I say, I'll have them for breakfast. I'll throw on some cinnamon and nutmeg and make them like pumpkin pie and smash them up and eat them that way for breakfast. They're so good. But anyway, so for these, I just put them in the oven. And I'm just going to take off the skins. And if I was doing them raw, I would just cut them with the skins on and throw them in the soup that way. But since I've got these cooked ahead of time, I'm going to just take the skins off because they're a little bit harder. I want to make sure they get cut up real good in the soup. I don't want a stringy skin coming out. I put them in about, well, I usually cook them a little bit lower. I'll set my timer for early in the morning, like at 3:25, and they'll cook for about 2 hours. But usually like an hour and 15, 20 minutes, depending on the size. I mean, these kind of sweet potatoes, they'll cook in about an hour. But, you know, one that's bigger, of course, is going to take longer. So, okay, so once I've got these, I'm just gonna slice them like so. They're a little bit easier to cut up too when they're already cooked, although they're a little bit messy.
And you just put them in dry as well?
Put them in what?
Dry, like in the oven as well?
Uh-huh, yep. I don't do anything to them. I don't even prick them. I just throw them on a cookie sheet and put them in the oven. So I like to keep things simple. In fact, I do that with winter squashes as well. I know I think I did a recipe in the fall with some winter squash, and it's to me, I don't like cutting up winter squashes because they're hard. You come close to losing fingers when you cut up winter squashes. So I just throw them in the oven whole and just cook them 350, 375 for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes, depending on what it is, and cook them that way. And then they're nice and soft, and the peel comes off really easy. Like you let it cool, peel will just come off really easy, like on a butternut squash. Okay, let's see where we're at in here. We'll test this kale. Look at us spinning. If you need some water, you can fill up some water here in the kitchen. Okay, I want to make sure that kale is nice and tender, and it's still not quite there yet. So we'll put the lid back on. And we are going to, let's see, I got everything ready, so I don't need to do anything with that. We're going to go ahead and move on over to our pie, our lemon pie. I firmly believe that a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet deserves some dessert. I love dessert. In fact, I love it too much, so I don't really ever make it until I've got somebody to share with. And that's kind of my rule of thumb. If you're going to make these desserts, make sure you've got somebody to share them with. If you have a sweet tooth and you have a hard time staying away from stuff, because these things are really healthy, but your mind plays tricks on you and tells you that because they're so healthy, you can eat the whole thing, or you can eat half the pie in one sitting. At least my mind tells me that. So, and it just doesn't work the same way. These are still high fat, high calorie, and I'd like to kind of work on doing some little bit healthier, like lower fat desserts. My desserts tend to be kind of high in nuts and dates and things like that. So they're very high calorie, rich, high fat desserts usually. But again, they're all made with all whole foods. So I'm going to start off with our crust ingredients. And the one thing about this is you're going to probably need a food processor and a blender. You could possibly do the crust and alter it a little bit in a just with a fork or something, like you could grind up your oats in your blender, and you could use a liquid sweetener and use peanut butter or some kind of a nut butter instead, and you'll see more what I'm talking about as I put it together. That's kind of in the way. In case anybody didn't get that, I'll just put that over here so you can see a little bit better there. Okay, so we're going to start off with some oats. And these are gluten-free oats. These are rolled oats, just regular rolled oats. I want to use some kind of a flour for my crust. And then instead of using lard or oil or whatever it is we do to make a crust, I'm going to use nuts, whole food fats. The great thing about whole food fats is there's fiber in these nuts. The fiber is bound to those fats, or the fats are bound to the fiber. So when you eat it, you're chewing it, and your body's, it's taking a long time to get those oils out and get them into your system. And some of those oils don't even get released from the fibers, and they go right through you into the toilet bowl. so you're not absorbing all of the fats that are in the food. So you want to get your fats, your oils, from whole foods. And then we're going to add some sweetener to this, and this is dates. My favorite sweetener, whole food sweetener. Again, all the parts of the plant are still there, nothing's taken away, nothing added. And this is about 12. And these are pitted, but I always go through and give them a little squeeze because you don't want to get your food processor going and hear some clanging in there and realize that you have a pit that you got to dig out. Can't tell you how many times I've had to do that. I'm just going to jump over here and check things out here. And I'm going to put in a little bit more water. And that's looking like it's cooking good, so I'm going to add in the rest of our ingredients. So I've got a can of tomatoes. These are chopped tomatoes. And I'm just going to clean out the can with a little bit of water. Tomatoes concentrate in the male reproductive organs and decrease risk of pancreatic cancer. Men with the highest levels of lycopene, which is in tomatoes, have a great reduction in stroke, like, let's see, 39% lower risk of stroke. Okay, and then I'm going to put in some tomato paste. I like using tomato paste. It gives it a real rich tomatoey flavor. Tomatoes also, like I said earlier, protect your skin from the sun, from DNA damage from the sun. And when you combine all of these foods, these tomatoes and the greens and the onions, and get this combination going, you know, they work synergistically, all of these foods, the compounds, creating health in your body. Your body's loving it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add some more water. Let's see, how much broth do we add to that soup? I haven't even noticed. Like 5 cups of water. And of course you can add however much water or broth that you want. I tend to like a very thick soup, hearty soup, but you can thin it down however you like it. We may add a little bit more than that. I'm going to go ahead and add this, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and add some garbanzo beans. And this is a little bit less than 3 cups. And these beans I cooked from scratch. I took the whole bean, put it in a bowl and covered it with water, and then they swell. Garbanzo beans will swell about 3 times as much. So if you're going to be gone for the day, you may want to put like triple the amount of water so they stay covered. I let them soak for about 24 hours. You can let them soak for 8 hours, 8 to 24 hours. I like to go to 24 hours because the more you let them set, the more bubbly on top they get. Then you dump that off down the drain, and that's some of that problem with gas is from the compounds that come off from the bubbly mixture that when you drain off. And then you just rinse them really well, throw them in a crock pot, cover them with water, and cook them for 8 hours while you're at work or while you're sleeping, and they're ready when you get up in the morning or when you get home from work. It's a great way to cook your beans, and if you don't want to even do that, just buy canned beans, because canned beans are great. Beans are high in fiber. They are good for the gut. Who knows what your microbiome is? Yeah, that's kind of a hot topic these days. It's your bacteria, your gut bacteria that's all over your skin. You've got a microbiome on every inch of your skin. It's got bacteria, and we've got good bugs and bad bugs, and we want to feed the good bugs, and their favorite food is fiber. So the more fiber we can get, the happier they are. Fiber is anti-inflammatory. Well, having a good gut microbiome is anti-inflammatory. I'm going to go ahead and chop up this cilantro and add it. You want about 1/4 cup or to about 1/2 cup. Maybe I'll go ahead and throw those sweet potatoes in too. And one thing about the sweet potatoes being already cooked is they'll add a little bit of creaminess to the soup. And if you don't like the soft texture of the sweet potato, then you might want to just cook them with the soup. And that way you can kind of control that. But when I cook them in the oven, I have a tendency to get them get them a little bit soft, but I like it that way. It makes the soup really yummy. Okay, we're gonna chop up that cilantro. Cilantro is really great for removing heavy metals from your body, and we all have a tendency to have high levels of lead or high levels of metals in our body, especially if we've got silver teeth, like we got back in the day when they used those amalgam fillings. Uh-huh.
Some recipes call when you use canned garbanzo beans, they call for the liquid, the aquafaba.
Mm-hmm.
So is that pretty high? I prefer with the
I don't think so, because what you're doing is of course canned beans. They're probably not soaking and getting rid of that. Possibly that possibly could have some of those compounds in there. The one thing about those compounds though, and that effect that it may have on your body, if it does, and some people, I don't have a problem with beans at all. I've been eating beans my whole life. My gut's used to it. But if you haven't, you could have that problem. But and the reason is because your gut's not used to it. And so the more you eat them, the more you build up that bacteria that helps to digest that. So I've heard, there's a gastroenterologist that I like to follow, Will, and I can never think of his last name because it's really long and hard to pronounce. But he wrote the book Fiber Fueled. Excellent book if you want to read about the gut and healing the gut and the best way to do that. He says if you can't eat beans, eat one bean every day. And then when you can tolerate that, eat 2 beans. He's literally just add that little bit, because he says they're so important for building your gut and having a healthy microbiome. They have resistant starch in them, and that resistant starch resists digestion, normal digestion, and goes into the large intestine, and that's where it's fermented into short-chain fatty acids, which is what feeds your gut. So I'm going to add some more water to this soup. I didn't put my seasonings in. Let's see, I've got some chili powder in here, tablespoon of chili powder, half a teaspoon of cumin, and a half a teaspoon of coriander. I like to put in the seasonings a little bit later on in the cooking, because if you cook it for a long time, sometimes those flavors get cooked out. Cooked too much, overcooked. All right, we're just gonna let that simmer for a bit. Are you sure?
It says ground cinnamon and cumin.
Oh, sorry. I read that wrong. Cumin, coriander, and cinnamon. No chili powder. Sorry about that. This has got a kick to it, and I had it in my head, but that's from the green chilies. We'll wait to put the peanut butter in. Okay, back to our pie. See how our oven's looking. It's almost 7 o'clock. Oh, those look so good. They need to get a little bit brown still though. Okay, so we've got our pie ingredients in here. Let me grab this real quick. We want a little bit of vanilla. So we're going to go with about a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And put the lid on. Okay, what we're looking for on this is ingredients to get all ground up and crumbly and start to stick together, and so that we can press it down into our pan. I'm going to go ahead and measure out some peanut butter for our soup. We're going to put a half a cup in, I believe. Half a cup peanut butter. And this is the Adams, 100% natural. gives it a really great flavor. That makes it the African. Okay, so this started, what we want to do is we want to test that. I got peanut butter all over that. We want to test this crumble and see if it's going to stick together. Looks like it's starting to come together. You can just pinch out a little bit, and it looks like it's holding together pretty good. I might go just a little bit longer. Now, if you want a really healthy, kind of healthy snack, just a little snack, you can take this stuff right here and roll it in a ball and just pop it in your mouth, or throw in some cocoa powder or some other dried fruit and make some little truffles. I like to do that at Christmas time. That's my treats that I give, is nut date truffles. Okay, so the pan that I'm going to use for this, and I use this for what I'm serving you tonight. I'm actually got one that I've already got made. I'm using a square pan just because it's a lot easier to serve when I'm serving more than just a few people. So it's easier to cut this way, and it's just easier all around. I think a pie is kind of a ridiculous shape for, it's just hard to cut. It looks cute, but. Okay, so we're just going to dump all this in my pan. And you can use this type of a crust on any type of pie. And I do like lots of pie. I have lots of pie recipes. And when you're doing a pie, there's plenty that you can push along the side and, push it up on the sides of the pie pan. And we'll kind of do that here as well. And then you just push it down in the bottom and try to get it fairly even if you can. This is so much healthier than your white flour Crisco crust, This is more like a graham cracker crust. What?
Probably tastes way better.
Yes, so much better. So much easier to make. No more rolling out and trying to make it fancy around the side, although it looks really nice. It's hard to make this look very fancy. Okay, there you go. It's in there good. All right, and now we will do the innards of our pie, the cream part of it. And we're going to use our blender, high-powered blender for this. Just want to make sure that doesn't get too, we'll go ahead and turn that off. There we go. Okay, so the base of this pie is going to be a tofu and cashew. That's going to be our cream. And I want to assure you that this type of soy that's closest to whole soybeans. Now, tofu is a processed food, but still all the parts of the plant are still intact. They haven't taken anything away. They may have they've coagulated it, but as far as taking things away, they haven't. So nothing's concentrated. The harmful effects or the information on the internet that says soy is bad is getting the information from studies that were looking at isolated soy protein. So the studies that they were doing, like on rats, that show increased risk of cancer or whatever, were done with isolated soy protein. That's not how you're supposed to eat soy. You want to eat soy like edamame, the green soybeans. Soy milk is okay. That's very minimally processed. Tofu is very minimally processed. Asians have been eating tofu for hundreds of years. It actually decreases risk of cancer. So we don't need to worry about soy. So what I'm going to do, and I neglected to change your recipe. It says 1 box of Mori New Silken Tofu. This is not Mori New. That's just a brand. This is actually Azumea Tofu. I don't know how to pronounce that. But anyway, huh?
Does it matter the brand?
No, it doesn't. You just want the silken tofu. But on your recipe sheet, it says just 1 box, and those boxes are 12 ounces. This container is actually 16 ounces. So I'm just going to do 3/4 of this. So if you can't, this is just what I found at Smith's. I know Natural Grocer has has the smaller boxes, the 12-ounce boxes. So I'm just gonna.
I thought the negative with soy is because they have to use so much fertilizer on soybeans.
Oh, I've never heard that about soy.
Roundup and
Oh,
bad
okay.
fertilizer.
Oh yes, I have heard about that. And you want to make sure it's organic. You want to use the organic tofu is not made from genetically modified soybeans.
That is organic.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay, and then we want to add we're going to add some nuts. Again, this makes it a little bit higher in fat. And I'd like to play around with this recipe a little bit and see if I can cut back on the nuts or even add, I've discovered white sweet potatoes or even a Japanese sweet potato. They are so sweet and really good, and they make a nice, like I make a whipped cream for a pumpkin pie with part sweet potatoes, part cashews. So I'd like to play around with that a little bit and see if I can cut back on the nuts in this. So, but I'm using 3/4 cup of cashews, and this is just going to add some healthy fats and just to make this a little bit richer and creamier. Yes.
Are those soaked?
They are not. That would add a little bit too much moisture to it. You want to be careful. You don't want to add too much moisture to this because you do want it to set up. And we do have, and I do say to freeze it, but you don't have to freeze it. I've made it where I haven't frozen it, and it's just a creamy. It sets up fairly nicely. It just takes, you got to set it up in the refrigerator for about 24 hours for it to be at a good firmness. Okay, and then I'm going to add again my sugars, and this is dates. Again, I'm using dates, and I've got 25 pitted dates, and I've got them soaking in that 1/2 cup of lemon juice. And that soaking that ahead of time is going to help this to blend up much creamier, easier. If you don't have a strong blender like a Vitamix or something, you definitely want to soak your dates. And you know what? If you could put the nuts in with your lemon juice and put them all in one jar, and it would soften up those nuts a little bit too, where it would blend a little bit easier. Like I say, if you don't have a strong Vitamix, I think it would probably work. So we'll just go ahead and add that. And if you needed to add a little bit of more water to this, or some kind of moisture, you probably could, and it'd probably be okay. Okay, and then I'm going to add the zest of 1 lemon. This lemon zest really makes a difference. Adds some really nice flavor to this. I've got a recipe for a key lime pie, although I don't use key limes, I just use regular limes. But the base of it is avocado. Have you guys seen recipes like that where the avocado is the base? In fact, I was just looking at a recipe for a chocolate pie where the base was avocado. That wouldn't work really for a lemon pie. I mean, you could get it to taste like lemon pie, but it probably wouldn't look like lemon pie. It would look a little unappetizing. Huh? It does. Yes, it does. Okay, and that is it. I don't think I've got any vanilla in the cream part, so we'll go ahead and blend that up. And I'm just going to kind of scrape down the sides a little bit. I've got a little bit of buildup there from the dates. Nuts make such a great cream. If you want to add cream to a soup, any type of creamy soup, you could substitute your dairy, which I highly recommend doing, with something else, and nuts make a great cream. Cauliflower, creamed cauliflower is a great creamy base for a soup as well. One thing you got to be careful with these high-powered blenders is they do heat up, and I try to kind of keep a feel on that when I'm blending to make sure it doesn't get too hot. I really encourage people, if you're going to go to a whole food diet and do more things like this, to invest in a really good blender like the Vitamix. It's an expensive blender, but it's about the cost of most other appliances at my house. My dishwasher, my stove, my washer dryer, you know, they're expensive items. But I use this more than any of those. I use this every day, and it's worth every penny. I've had this thing about 19 years, the base of it, still going strong. Have never had a problem with it. I do have to change these out and buy new blender jars because they get really disgusting, and after a while they'll start to leak. But I use mine a ton for classes and my own, you know, stuff. So I don't think that's a problem probably people normally have with them. That just use them average everyday use. So I'm just going to add this, and see, it's already, it starts to firm up. Those dates, when everything swells, when the fiber swells and it kind of sets, it thickens up really nicely. And of course it's a little off color, so I have put, you know, slices like thinly lemon slices on top just to kind of, you know, make it look nice if I'm serving it. Of course you want to pull those off. Or maybe you don't if you like to eat lemon like that. But it doesn't look too bad. It's not like it's brown. It's just not a nice white color or a nice lemon color. I tried to think of something that I could color it with, something that's yellow, but I don't know what that would be. Huh? Oh, turmeric. Oh, that's a good idea. Although I don't know how that would taste. May not taste very good. Although turmeric's pretty mild. I might have to try that. Even just like a 1/16 of a teaspoon might give it a good color. And I like to get every drop, but I won't. Now you can put this in the refrigerator. Like I said, it'll set up quite nicely, but I love a cold lemony. I just love the cold, and so the one I'm serving has been frozen. It's been sitting out for a couple hours though, so it'll be thawed a little bit. But you can, you know, leave it like this, and like I said, it cuts pretty good. I mean, it's pretty soft, but it does serve pretty nicely. So, all right, you guys, we are just about there. I'm going to go ahead and add this peanut butter to the soup, and you can leave the peanut butter out. Like I said, it just gives it a really nice rich flavor. Add some fats. I don't know if peanut butter's really got healthy fats or not, because peanuts aren't really a nut. They're actually a legume, and I think the best way to eat peanuts is boiled. Have you guys ever had boiled peanuts? Because they're cooked in water and no oils, of course. I just think it's probably a healthier way to have peanuts. They're hard to find though. I don't know that I know of any place around here that has boiled peanuts. My brother-in-law from Alabama, he sent us a canister of them. I guess they're fairly popular in some places, but they were very good. Now this is really, really thick, and it's really, really hot too, but I think I'm just gonna leave it like this. And you guys can, when you make it, if you want to do it thinner, you can. I didn't put any salt in, which I do add a little bit of. Let me get a teaspoon. And I'm going to add about a teaspoon to this. This is a half a teaspoon, so we'll go 2 of those.
What temperature have you been cooking it at?
Pardon me?
What temperature have you been cooking it at?
The soup? You know, I started it out at like medium high just to get the onions cooked, and then I think I dropped it down to about medium. You know, I don't cook with gas at home, so whenever I cook here, it's a little bit different, but it just kind of depends. You know, if you want to hurry up the cooking, you can just cook at a higher temperature, but just keep an eye on it and make sure you're not leaving it, you know, and burning stuff. But if you got a little bit more time and you can let it just simmer, you can, you know, lower temperature. The tests that they did on cooking styles were, you know, they boiled the soup or the vegetables, and the nutrients were all still there. They were just in the water. So the cooking I mean, you lose some, like your vitamin C gets lost, but you're not losing a lot with that type of, when you cook it. In fact, like I say, some foods you get more nutrients from them when you cook them, and some you lose. One of my a gal I used to listen to online, she said, cooked food has what raw food doesn't, and raw food has what cooked food doesn't. So eat both. Eat a good variety of both. And don't worry too much about, you don't want to overcook it. Although I saw a study, Dr. Michael Greger, Nutrition Facts, he shows a study about where they boiled kale for like 10 minutes. I mean, literally just boiled it and boiled it and boiled it. And that boiled kale had more immune boosting power than the raw kale. So again, the more they cooked it, the better it was, although it probably lost some things as well. So, okay, I am going to move this out on the counter here. I'm going to let you guys serve yourselves. We'll pull those potatoes out. Those potatoes look so good. I take a B12, which is you need to do if you are eating 100% plant-based. Although, as you get older, you need to take B12 anyway. Everybody does. Everybody's low in B12. So it's not a vegan thing or anything necessarily. And vitamin D in the winter, I do just like 2,000 micrograms, just because it's kind of insurance. I don't like taking supplements. And let's see, that's pretty much it. I don't like taking supplements. I don't think if you're eating really healthy, you should get your nutrients from food. Vitamin D isn't a vitamin; it's a hormone. So, and you only get that from the sun. So, I don't know if can you guys see these potatoes? Oh my gosh, they look so good. A little ketchup with these would be really good too. Okay, I'm not going to mess those up. We'll leave them right like that, and you can just help yourself.